like Maggie said, my name is Megan. I'm a sophomore here. I am a nursing major with a religion minor. And tonight I just want to talk a little bit about something that God's been putting on my heart for a while now, for a majority of this year. And that's the idea of performing faith versus living out a life of faith. But before I do that, just a little background on myself. I grew up in Eden Prairie. If you're not from around here, that's like an hour north, somewhere in the cities. And as for like church and whatnot, I grew up going to Sunday school once in a while. I got confirmed, had my first communion, went to camp every summer, but my family's not really a family that talks about faith or prays together or does much of that. And so after I got confirmed, I walked away from the church for a little bit, not because anything like drastic happened. I just didn't really have a connection to keep me there. But then sophomore year of high school, I don't really know why, but one day I decided to go to youth group. And so I did that, and then from there on out, I just kept going. It was a place that I felt at home, and I joined our leadership team. And from there, it's just kind of been an ongoing, growing relationship with Christ. And so that's kind of where I am today. I'm in a relationship with Christ that continues to grow, but it always hasn't been that way, even though I really try to make it seem like that a lot of times. So I have a question for you all. How many of you have ever put on like a fake front when you've been having a bad day and someone's like, how are you doing? And you're just like, good, fine, when you're clearly not. Well, good, because I have two. And that's kind of what I mean by performing life or performing faith in general. It's just that, like putting on that front that you have everything all together, you have the answers, you're not struggling with anything when, in fact, you probably are, because most of us do. So the first time I really realized, one of the first times I realized I was performing life more in general was the end of my senior year, and I was sitting at the Eden Prairie School's Legacy Awards banquet, and I was up for the district student of the year, and so I was listening to what my friends and peers, teachers had said about me, and I was obviously so honored to be there. They talked about like positions I had held in DECA and BPA and just like random organizations, being softball captain of the softball team, and things like that. And so I was honored to be recognized for these things that I was so passionate about. But it kind of occurred to me, I was kind of like, like if only these people knew that this was just something that a lot of these things were things I did to make it look like I had everything all together when really I didn't. I covered up so many of like my struggles. Like they didn't know all the problems I would have with friends or the feelings of inadequacy that so many people have. Because I guess that means I did a pretty good job performing all throughout high school because they didn't see those insecurities and they didn't, and like the feelings that I didn't know where life was necessarily taking me. So fast forward from there was last year, was my freshman year at Gustafson. May 2nd, I was sitting in my dorm room, probably writing some paper I didn't want to write, and I looked at my phone and my friend from California was calling me, and if you know me, I absolutely hate talking on the phone. Like, I have anxiety of it. So I didn't really want to answer, but I was like, I don't know why she's calling me, like this is weird. So I answered the phone and she said, Megan, have you watched the news? And I was like, no, why would I watch the news? And she said like the words that no one ever wants to hear and not words that very many hear in their life. And she said, Mandy's missing. I don't really remember the rest of that conversation because my head was spinning and I just kept replaying that in my head. Mandy's missing. So you're probably wondering who Mandy is. But Mandy was my biggest role model growing up. And she was a couple years older than me. She graduated from UMD a couple of years earlier. But I had known Mandy since before I could remember. And we had family connections. Our brothers had grown up together. And she was basically the epitome of who I wanted to be when I was younger. She was the most bubbly and vibrant person I'd ever met. She was super good at softball, which was like my dream when I was younger. So, like I said, Mandy was one of arguably the best softball player to ever go through Eden Prairie. And she used those talents to work with kids and to coach other teams. And I'd worked with her in different clinics and stuff. So I knew Mandy pretty well. And then one day with Mandy in particular stands out to me, and it was the end of my senior year, right before our sections tournament started. Mandy was pitching to me like she had done all of high school for me. She would come back and pitch for us, and I was just having a bad day, and I couldn't even swing my bat, it felt like. And she stepped off the mound and came over to the plate, just talked to me and said, "Megan, you're too focused on the fact that you didn't get a hit on the last pitch instead of focusing on crushing the next one. You need to roll with the pitches one by one, because if I throw you a curveball, you're gonna miss it." And when Mandy went missing, that's exactly what happened. A curveball was thrown. And for months, searches went on and on, looking for her. By that point, kind of knowing we were probably looking for a body, but they didn't give up nonetheless. So fast forward another few months, we're at this fall, and Saturday, October 26th, I got the call from, I think it was my mom, that Mandy's body had been found. It was just a few days shy of the 6-month mark of her going missing. So I went home from the funeral, and people from all over came. I had friends from all over the country. My best friend flew home from California for it. And so in that time, there was a lot of closure and a lot of peace, but there were still a lot of unanswered questions. And so when I came back to Gustavus after the funeral, I started retreating from my Christian community here, because I felt like I had to be the strong one still for my friends at home, and I didn't want to have to put that facade on here, because when I was around it, I was just feeling drained all the time. And I felt like I had to be the one to tell my friends, God is here, God is great, he's still here in the midst of this time. Which, don't get me wrong, is completely true, but it was head knowledge to me at the time. It wasn't what I was feeling, and it wasn't what my heart knew at that time. And that's an example of how I have been putting on this mask of my faith, just saying oh no, my faith is still really strong, when indeed I had a lot of doubts and questions that weren't answered, which just left me feeling drained all the time. I was pretending that the trials that come with being a child of God didn't apply to me when I felt them full force. And I tried to sweep my doubts and my questions under the rug so that people wouldn't see them, because I thought that if my friends were to see that, they would see that my faith isn't always on this sturdy rock where it's high and mighty all the time. And for some reason I thought that they would judge me for that, but clearly did not give them the recognition they deserve, that they're understanding, wonderful, graceful people, and that they could help me through that time. But rather I was pushing them away with this mask that I was wearing, and it was a mask that is the exact opposite of what God calls us to, which is a life of community with authenticity and vulnerability. And I have never been a very vulnerable person. If you know me, I'm pretty good at putting up walls. But God has definitely seen that this last year and has pushed me out of that comfort zone. And one way God's done this for me is introducing me of a new way of being open, and that's through writing. So I started a blog, which was just for me, just so I could get whatever I wanted out. And I saw so much growth in myself through that. And then eventually, friends had found out and they asked to read it, so I gave it to them, and eventually got out more. And I just received various comments from people just that my openness in that helped them go through whatever they were feeling. And it just showed me that vulnerability is powerful, and vulnerability can heal. And you can see this in Isaiah 40:29. God says, He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. So in this, I'm called to stand in the midst of my struggles and my pain, because God gives me power in that, and God gives you power in that. The power to stand and say that we don't always have it all together. There's power in vulnerability and strength in laying it all down on the table for others to see. And it allows them to know that they're not alone in what they're going through sometimes. And that's kind of what I want to do tonight. So to say that sometimes I don't have all the answers. I have my doubts. I have my moments where my faith isn't as strong as I sometimes make it seem. And that there's been times when my faith has become a symbol rather than a relationship, a symbol where I want others to see like I am a good Christian, whatever that actually means, I don't know. But it's become for someone else rather than for myself. But I know that it's okay that I have these struggles, and it's okay that I have these questions and these doubts at times, because if I was perfect, then Jesus' death wouldn't really mean anything. If we all were perfect, if we didn't sin, we didn't have questions, we didn't have pain, we didn't have doubts, then what would have been the point for Jesus to die for us? Because then we would have been perfect. So that's the question that's been in my head over and over and over again lately, is why do we hide these flaws from one another when we're supposed to be in this community together? So no, I don't have all the answers, and I'm sure you don't either, and if you do, come talk to me, because I'd like to know them. But I stand here saying that like as a community, we need to live out our faith with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything else that comes with it, because it shouldn't be an act that we put on for others, but something that we're living for ourselves and living as a community to build one another up. And like I said, God's been putting this on my heart for a long time, and I'm by no means perfect at it, like, or even good at it yet. I still struggle and have to remind myself every single day to not perform my faith or life in general. And just yesterday I was talking to my sister. She's a junior in high school. I think she's wonderful, and I think she deserves the world. Might be a little biased, but it's fine. But right now she's at a place where she just feels like the world is dumping on her, and she doesn't know what's coming next, and she's just kind of like, God, what are you going to give me? Because I don't know if I can handle it. And I was just talking with her and like telling her like, yeah, like those feelings are really valid, and like that frustration is okay to have. And I told her, it's like, I've gone through that too, like problems with friends, problems with high school pressure and stuff like that. And she just was like shocked. She's like, what do you mean you've gone through that too? And I was like, yeah, like I went through that in high school. Like I'm a normal teenager. I was a normal like high schooler. But she didn't know that, and like she felt so alone in that struggle, because way back then I had covered that up from her and from most people. And so the Bible tells us we're gonna have struggles. John 16:33 says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. In this world, you will have trouble. But that doesn't mean that we have to hide those things from one another, especially when we can use those things to build each other up and use those things to help one another in our life circumstances. So clearly I'm still working on this, but I challenge you to do the same and to push back the fears you might have of being vulnerable and letting other people know what's up in your life, because that's going to help to create a community of openness and authenticity.